the myths that might be out there that you've observed that keep people from starting. And I'm sure there's myths along the way that cause people to fold. So what are the stories we're telling ourselves and what do we have wrong?
So it's very interesting because one of the first things that I hear, and something that I've even said before, and I've had to like catch myself with saying, is that there aren't any resources available. There aren't any resources. I hear that all the time. There's no resources. There's no resources. And unless you're in tech, unless you're in a bio business, and that is not the case. Like I think about everything that they're doing with Sea Change. They've been really pioneering this whole movement of bringing together or building out a true entrepreneurship social impact hub with Social Ventures, Vicky over at Social Ventures. And like there's so many different points like of these different things that I love about Columbus, where all of us are identifying, okay, there's this fragmentation. It's not that resources don't exist. People just give up looking for them. So before you even get to the resource, it's easier to just be like, oh my goodness. Okay, I spent 5 minutes on Google and this isn't, there's no resources available. But we've played in this field or this area for such a long time that we realized that that's not the case. It's not the lack of resources. It's more so just getting it in the hands of our community. So,
and that's probably true of most social ventures. If people want to do good in the world and they're uniquely built to contribute something, I'm sure there's a way of connecting with folks who care about the same thing you care about. But presently, we've just got the Google search going on. So I love this. Okay, so that's the first thing that keeps people from starting. If you don't have the cash, you can't even imagine what the first step is. Give me another one.
I think that also I hear this a lot as well. That Columbus, I'm going to speak specifically for Columbus, has very little to offer.
I'm sure people all in every city in America think that of their locale. I'm sure that that's not unique to Columbus.
Except for Ski. Ski doesn't feel that way about Chicago.
Okay. But a lot of people tell themselves that story about, there's nothing special about where I'm from.
Yeah.
Well, and it's a point though. It's kind of, we do, even in Chicago, right? It's all about the mindset, like you're saying, right? It's a myth because it's outside of your frame of reference. You just can't imagine that something exists because you don't see it around you every day. So a lot of it is just getting into a space where people are doing those things, right? It's a very communal thing once you get in there, but it's hard to find it because it's not making a lot of noise. It's not on the news. It's not advertised everywhere. And so it is one of those things where you almost kind of have to know someone to get introduced to what's happening there.
Yeah. And actually, that's a really, really good point. I think that Ski and I talk about this all the time. It is so easy to feel like you can't make it in a place that you're usually from. And when you go elsewhere, it feels like you're finding success, but it's really because you don't have all those filters. Like, you don't see anything wrong. Like, oh, I could do this. I could do this. Like, you don't have these pre-built-in conditions that make you feel like, okay, you can't do it or you're going to fail. And so, but Columbus has so much to offer. Like, I've talked to someone in business before and they're like, yeah, I got to move to LA or I have to move to Houston. And I'm like, listen, if you could make it in Columbus, you can make it anywhere.
It's a launch city.
It is a launch city. And it's actually been wrote about plenty of times, even in Forbes, that Columbus is like the what is it, Silicon Valley of the Midwest. So there's so much opportunity here.
Well, and I love this, you're reminding us about the filters we're using, right? I'm I'm a transplant to the place where my husband and I have practiced dentistry for 30 years. We think it's the coolest New England town ever. It's just, they have their little ski hill where your kids can go learn to ski right in the center of town. And the two sports complex and the beautiful hospital, the park with the maple leaves turning every shade of the rainbow. And I'm from Illinois. I live in Vermont, and I am an outsider, so I still see all the wonder here. Yeah. But when I go back to the town where my husband and I grew up in Illinois, I have that lens problem again. Yep. I see it through the lens of all these preconceived notions. And that's a really important principle to be a self-awareness to have no matter what you're doing in the world. Don't you think?
Yeah,
yes,
for sure. I definitely do. You have to continue to find the beauty in your surroundings and what it is that you do, because it's very easy to it gets old. It gets old. Like it gets old quick, and you get used to things very, very fast. So,
and everyone's so quick to tell you about their negative story or the scarcity. We're back to the scarcity thing in your surroundings. Whereas if you're new, it's just, if your mind is searching for points of progress, you'll find them. Yeah. If you don't have this jaded opinion about your surroundings. Okay. Tell us another myth. And if you've got a story about any of these, please add those as well.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I have a couple. I'll just throw them out there. Maybe it'll spark a story, but I'll rattle off a couple real quick. I'm so ready for my business. All I need is funding and a website. And I'm ready to go. Or that's not for me. But yet they've never tried to put themselves in that space to see if it is. Now, I want to be very clear. There are some spaces that are off-putting. There are, absolutely. But I'm here to tell you from my personal experience, at least in this region, it's far and few between. This is really a very welcoming ecosystem. So really, it's a matter of showing up. I'm big on this for 22. This is my thing. You got to show up. You just have to put yourself in the space around the people that you want to be doing that type of thing. So those two, I'll let you, I know you want to jump on.
Because I want to say something. Okay, I'm going to save the funding, but I do want to say something to the second part of like, you just have to show up, or people, what did you say? People say like, that's not for me.
That's not for me. That's
not for me. I think a lot of times we hear that. That's a huge myth we hear is like, oh, that's not for me, or I don't want to be in that space. I'm not that type of person. Or people just don't get it. One of the biggest things when it comes to having a successful business is networking and making relationships. And oftentimes, even when even now, sometimes, but when I started off, so many times I felt that imposter syndrome. And like, oh, I don't want to talk to them because they're going to know that I don't know what it is that I'm talking about, or I'm not a billionaire. And the fact is that most businesses are making under $1 million. And so it wasn't until like one time, oh my goodness, this actually happens all the time, but I'm not gonna say who, but we were having a conversation with someone and I really admired them. Like I was like, oh my God, we're gonna be meeting them. We're gonna sit down. We're gonna be able to talk to them. Ask them how they built out this amazing thing. And when we sat down, they were like, yeah, business is terrible. Like, oh, it's so bad right now. Like, goodness.
You realize everybody's going through the same thing, right?
Yeah.
There's no magic. Like, business is hard.
Yeah.
And it's hard for everybody across the spectrum.
They're like, we're going to have to like pivot this idea and bring in this. And for the longest, I had felt like, oh my goodness, like if we pivot or if we bring in a new business idea, like that's going to make us look like we don't know what we're doing. They're like, yeah, we're about to do this. We're going to add this because sales are down over here. And honestly, most people, they don't really know what they're doing. They understand the concept. Like we understand the concept of a good business model, but this is just theory. Like there isn't a blueprint that says this is how you scale a business. This is how you make it to $1 million. This is how you make it to $1 billion. Like we are literally playing. We are theorizing. We're understanding principles, and then we're just using consistency to make it happen.